Thank you for being here. Okay. My first encounter with this was when my mother passed away when I was 2 years old, and my younger brother was 1 year old. It happened 50 years ago. She was 9 months pregnant, weak to have another baby, and they both died. It was a carbon monoxide poisoning gas accident. So it was a miracle. We survived and they died because we live in the same apartment. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I was told that I was the one who opened the door for my father when he came to apartment and took him to her dead body, where me and younger brother had been playing by her. Because of her death, this was always on my mind growing up. It kind of haunted me. So I felt always somebody there in the dark. For years, I wondered why we survived, why we didn't die. Since my father couldn't take care of us, I ended up in an orphanage. I grew up 2 different orphanages where was a very difficult place for grieving and traumatized child. Not only I lost both parents, but also I was exposed to a lot of abuse. And then I cried a lot as I grew up. And I felt so weak, and then I couldn't stand up for myself for a long time. But one day, I learned there's a power of destroying rocks. I was chased by a bunch of orphans. They're pretty mean kids. And then I fell to the ground. And this time, I saw the rock in front of my face. So I grabbed the rock and then threw the rock as hard as I could. And the rock hit one of the kids' face. And that kid went down. And I got beat up for it. But after that, I started carrying the rocks in my pocket to protect myself. And I was called for it all the time, but I didn't stop carrying the rocks. And one day, my orphanage make a baseball team. They put me on a pitcher because I had a good aim. Then, after that, I didn't like life in the orphanage at all. So when I graduated junior high school, I went to boarding high school for boys. I got discharged from orphanage. I played baseball all high school time. In the college, but I had to give up the baseball because baseball hit my right eyes, almost blinded me. It was a huge loss for me. But luckily, I met surfing. I started surfing when I was in college, studying to be a PE teacher. After graduate, I came to the United States and ended up in Portland, Oregon. For the social work class assignment, I went to the Dagi Center, the place for National Center for the Grieving Children and Family. I was shown a 2020 video. It was aired on the national television. In the video, children talk about the death of their parents. That triggered my own grief. I started crying. Then I was told it was okay to cry at the Dagi Center. That made me cry more. And I ended up crying for a long time. And then I feel kind of relieved a little bit, but at the same time, I kind of freaked out. After that, lot of flashback, memory came back, and dreamed about what happened in the past. It was a very difficult time for me. But this time I asked for help. Met my friend who was trained at the Dagi Center, working with grieving children. And she encouraged me to take a training, go back to the Dagi Center. So I decided to go back a year later. And I attended 4-day training. And I met Cynthia White, the training director of the kids at Dagi Center at that time. And training was difficult for me, challenging, because I never worked with my grief and the trauma. One time I almost ran from the training, but encouragement from others, I completed 4-day training. And then I had an interview with Cynthia, and I told her I'm not ready for work with grieving children. But she shared she had been orphanages and also foster care as a child like me. She encouraged me to be a facilitator, work with grieving children. And then also I learned from her it was okay to have own grief. That could be for the resource for the other children. To make a long story short, like a movie, Top Gun back in the 80s, I fall in love with my instructor and teacher. A year later, we married. Began our life together as a grief workers, teaching, doing the research in Japan 1 year, and I came to Hawaii, and where I started studying social work in graduate school. And then we started Kids to Hawaii 18 years ago. I worked with over 5,000 grieving children and traumatized children in Hawaii and in Japan, supporting their parents' loss from death and separation, as well as trauma, death, and abuses. I learned from children the grief never ends, and also grieving can be fun. The model Cynthia taught uses play and peer support to assist children in their natural healing process. In Hawaii, we work with foster children, orphans, and children who are impacted by divorce and violence. In Japan, we worked with 2011 tsunami victims, helping to develop the services like Dagi Center and Kids to Hawaii for families, for children and families. The peer support works so well for the grieving children and traumatized children. I wish I had this kind of services, the support, when I was in the orphanage. I struggled because I had to deal with the death alone. Up until I learned grief and trauma and how to support others, I couldn't help myself. I can relate to the children who are struggling with grief and trauma. I can replace their parents who died and who are separated, but I can support them. I can take their pains away, but I can create a safe place so that children can process their grief and trauma. I bring children together so that children can grieve with other children, not grieve by themselves, and also think about death and dying alone, like I did when I was a child. Thank you.